young lady that I'm going to be working on. I'm going to be doing this painting. This is going to be a 24-inch by 36-inch painting of her. And it's going to be in oil. It's going to be beautiful. And I'll be starting that tomorrow. And then I'll be finishing kind of, or at least finishing it for now, these paintings that you see here. All of the paintings, as long as they're in my studio, I continue to work on them, but I'm going to be doing her next. And she's my first Facebook queen that I literally get to do. And I'm very, very happy about this. I'm going to really do a great job on her. If anybody wants some original oil, hand-painted oil paint done by a degreed professional fine artist whose work is going to be collectible, so it's going to go up in appreciation and value as time goes by, as my career goes by, be sure to hit my inbox, or you get my phone number right here on Facebook and my email. So, and different ways to contact me. So, by all means, please stay in touch with me. This is the person they call Powhatan, Tsenacommacah, or Tsenacommacah, however you want to pronounce it. They called him Chief Powhatan, but his real title was Matoaka. That basically meant King of Kings. And he had 31 different nations. They called them tribes, but actually there were 31 different nations that went all the way from D.C., Delaware area, all the way down to the Carolinas, all the way as west as the Shenandoah Valley and the Appalachian Mountains. So he had a pretty large territory that he controlled. And he was even known by other natives before the English came outside. His real name that the natives called him was Tsenacommacah. His real title was Matoaka. Of course, all of the governors or kings that worked underneath him, they were called Wezawarks. He started off as the Wezawarks of the Powhatan or the Powhatan or Powhatan natives of Richmond, and he also became when he became the Matoaka, or the King of Kings, he basically went down to the area we call Gloucester, right at the fork of the York River, where it forks over to the Mattaponi and Pamunkey River, named after the two tribes that was part of his confederation. That area was called Kamoka, and basically that's where his main palace was. That's where his main territory where he ruled. But he was originally from the area called Richmond. Richmond, Virginia was originally called Powhatan. And the area of Church Hill was the main epicenter of their religious practices. And they built the church, St. John's Church there. But originally, the priesthood of the Powhatan was there, and the priesthood of the Tsenacommacah. Their real name was not Powhatan natives. Their real name that they called themselves was the Tsenacommacah. Okay, this is his brother, Tsenacommacah. He took over in 1618 after Tsenacommacah died. And around 1618, that's the same time that Matoaka, her name was not Pocahontas. Poca means little in Spanish, poquito. Hantas means wanton woman, or B-I-C-T-H in Greek. So I doubt very serious if her name was actually called by the native Pocahontas. Her name was Matoaka. She had some other names like Amuet, but her royal name was Matoaka. And this is Tsenacommacah. He ruled from the Tsenacommacahs through most of the colonization period, actually more so than his older brother, much older brother, Tsenacommacah. He lived to be 99 years old. He lived to be 92. So these were very strong, long-lived individuals. Tsenacommacah, Matoaka. This is Captain John Smith and John Roth. He's holding her for ransom. So the name of this particular painting is The Abduction of Matoaka. The name of this painting over here is Kamatu Kingdom. It's the original name that was called by ancient Egypt. They were called Kemet or Kem. So that was their original name. It meant the black lands, fertile soil of Kemet, or also the people, black. And of course, this is Ra on the throne. And this is echoing the sun. And you can see there is an hourglass and a goblet. People are drunk on wine. He's looking down on earth, contemplating what in the world is going to happen. Of course, pandemics, all this stuff is happening now. Hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, you name it. So also over here I have Tupac, and also I have Nipsey Hussle. So Tupac Shakur and Nipsey Hussle. Those are 40 by 60 inches. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do these Native American eagle feathers. And what I'm going to do is grab a piece of board that's going to help me out. And sorry I had to go off camera just a bit. And then what I'm going to do is put the feathers into the board like that. And I might just get some a little small. I don't need anything this big. Okay. And I have several of these feathers, which I'm going to mimic his the type of tunic, his tunic when he really needed a favor, when he really needed something done, and he was really representing his people. So the feather was a very important symbol amongst Native Americans of the East Coast especially. And so it's very important to have that represented when you have a king of the Native Americans. And I'm going to just keep a couple of these feathers just to hold on to for reference. And I'm just going to use them kind of as references. And I have this, my little trusty holder here. This is going to kind of help me kind of visualize how this is going to go. Oops. And hopefully I can get this thing to stay in here. And the way this clamp is made is actually not the best for, so I think I'm going to, okay, I think I'm going to just have to go with 2 feathers. That might be enough. Okay, that might be enough right there to hold. If I can't get this one in, okay, maybe that, yeah, that's good. Okay. So I'm going to just angle this just a smidge more, kind of on a similar angle, so that I have any artwork there. Also, Mrs. Lynetta Brockington Thomas, I'm also doing research on your website design, so I'm with that as well. So no problems. It's just going to take me time. I have a lot of projects kind of in my pipeline, so plus I have these paintings, so I have a whole lot of stuff going on. Okay. So I just want to get this so I can see it really clear as I'm painting this. So the most important thing for me to do is my selection of brushes. I already have some brushes already out and ready to rock. And I just got to find a good place to put them. And I want a nice, I'm going to use this little synthetic brush. It's semi-soft but semi-hard. It's kind of in the middle. And I kind of like this brush for that purpose. I do have some other brushes that's a little bit more like a bristle brush. I think I'm going to set this one aside just in case I just need a little bit more firmness. And I think I have this one too. So, all right. So, I think I'm going to hold one of these feathers in my hand. Let me pick an interesting one. I think I like this one. Which one do I like? All right, okay, so this one, I'm feeling this one more. Okay. So I'm going to start out with the feathers here. Then these feathers are different designs, so I'm going to have to use my imagination. This is the type of eagle that has a darker tip. Sometimes they're like different levels of color. But a lot of this painting comes from my imagination. So what winds up happening is I'm just getting stuff like this feather. Getting stuff like this feather and just adding stuff, Adding stuff to the painting, And like, for example, the moccasins. I have these like moccasin slippers. So just to get the buckskin texture and all the different things I'll be adding to this painting. So without too much further ado, I think I'm going to start out with a darker color. And I think I'm going to use this bristle brush too. So I'm going to take this bristle brush out. And it's always some of the hardest thing about starting to paint is figure out which brush you want to start out with. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start out with my darks when I'm doing these feathers. And also I do have some reference drawings as well. And I think what I'm going to do is set some of these up. So I'm going to bring in this little smaller easel here and put it up somewhere so I can kind of reference. I don't want to block anything. Am I blocking too much of my painting up? I don't want to block it. So I'm going to put it somewhere kind of off to the side here so I don't block too much of the actual painting I'm working. Yeah, I can still see that. So, all right, so basically I'm working on that. I do want this to kind of pop. There's a whole lot of things I would like to do on this painting, but first I really want to tackle these. Also some grass over here, and I don't even know if it's still daylight outside. I got my studio kind of sealed off my windows, and I was just going to grab some grass, some tall grass, and paint that. But right now I'm on the feathers. So I'm going to start out with this first feather right here. And I'm going to start out with some dark tones. I'm mixing a little ultramarine blue with some dioxazine purple, and with a little bit of Mars black. Just a touch of that, just to get it as dark as I want it. Okay. And now this black has the attitude that I want. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of use the dark color to kind of paint in the shadows where I see it, the negative space of this feather. And just kind of sort of getting the silhouette of this thing in. And I'm kind of painting linearly right now, because I kind of just blocked it in earlier when I was putting it in, but now I think I really don't want to interfere too much in the rest of the painting. Okay. And I think the bristle brush selection was, and this is a number 1. I wish I had a number 0 bristle, but this will work. And I haven't been painting for a while because a lot of things have been going on outside. I've been also trying to design other painting concepts and doing other projects that's not painting involved. So I have not done a whole lot of painting. Some painting, you can see there's some updates to this painting here. But this painting, none of my painting, because with COVID going on, with the COVID virus going on, it's not a whole lot that I can do in terms of showing work in galleries, because nobody's going to galleries. People who buy art are staying at home. They're not going in. And there's people who go see and they don't buy anything. Those people might come in, but you want the people who buy art to come in and see your work. So this is the time to produce as much paintings as possible. So I'm just trying to get the general gist of how some of these feathers are going to go in. And I'm going in, like I say, with ultramarine blue, dioxazine purple, and a little bit of Mars black. And of course, I'm using real practicals here, because really this painting don't exist anywhere. I mean, I'm just taking different elements from different places and creating a fantasy picture. This painting exists in my mind. It's the only place it existed before I painted it. And also by painting, what happens is you end up making things into fruition, making things actual happen, manifest itself, that doesn't exist in reality, or it's been forgotten. And that's why I love painting history like this. I love painting real history fantasy pictures, but not fantasy pictures. These are fantasy simply because I made up the images. But these images existed in reality. It existed in society. And so I really, really like that idea that I can create paintings based on my curiosity about, I wonder, sometimes I sit back and I say, well, I wonder, I sit back and I say, well, I wonder how things were back in this day, at this time, I mean, back during the time of Pocahontas or Matoaka, of Tsenacommacah, what they call Chief Powhatan. I wonder how they felt about this. So this painting is about, when his daughter was abducted. Think about it. This is your favorite daughter. You may have multiple wives, because they had multiple wives, and you might have multiple children, but this is your absolute favorite child. And these people come from this other country that they've never seen before, and they thought that Captain John Smith was a mercenary. That's basically what it was. He was a hired mercenary by the London Company. And what he came here to do, they didn't come here to trade or make peace. They came here to take the country for England. I mean, that's not, Spain had already done it. Portugal had already done it. So it was clear what the mission was on Captain John Smith's mind. It was clear what the destiny of the natives was going to be to them. There was no quandary or mystery with that. I mean, that was a very, very known thing. That the end result is, by the time we're finished here with Jamestown, there aren't going to be any more. They're not going to be any more Native Americans. It's only going to be Englishmen here. Just like in Spain, with the Spanish country, in Mexico, there are not going to be any, there's not going to be any Aztecs or any Mayans or any Incas. It's going to just be Spaniards. Same thing with the Portuguese, with the natives there. So it was pretty well known what they were going to do, what the English were going to do, because the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French were already doing it by 1607 when the English showed up. I mean, they were already over there jacking up the natives in whatever prospective country they was in the so-called New World. Now, it wasn't a new world to the natives. It was a new world to the Europeans. It was only a new world to them. So to the natives, it was an invasion. It was an outright culture shock and a shift from everything they were used to. They were just not used to anything like what the Europeans had. The weaponry, the guns, the cannon, the ships, the armor, the suits of armor. All these things were foreign to the Native American person. I mean, we're not even to the soldiers or to the people who was responsible for protecting the people like Powhatan Confederacy. Because their main job was to protect the native people. Their main job was not to necessarily just rule and say, okay, we have so many pieces of food for so much, this or that. Their real job was to hunt first, provide meat, because they were farmers. Now the Tsenacommacah people, which Includes the Mattaponi tribe or nation, the Pamunkey Nation, the Powhatan Nation, as well as many, many other nations, many of which are extinct. The Nanzamans still exist. They were part of them. I think the Chickahominy just got reorganized back into a tribe from whatever remnant what was left. So, but I don't think the Chickahominy had maintained some independence from the Tsenacommacah. They were actually a small nation. Well, not a small nation. They were actually a little small group of little small country that was kind of like Switzerland and Italy. You know, that would be the best comparison. You have Italy there, and then you have the Swiss that kind of exist very near to the Italians, but very much independent. And even though they may have some similar cultural backgrounds, especially to the history, say before, before the Dark Ages, during the Roman time, they might have had some commonality there. But for the most part, today they're seen as a different group. So what I'm doing is just using the dark shadows to kind of go in. Now, like I say, I haven't been painting in a while, and I'm just starting back up. After about a month. Of course, the other months are the hot months. And sometimes in those months, I'm just not as productive with my artwork as I usually am. So, So I'm just going to get in here and just get some of this feather work done. Now, I'm not really trying to be very precise with this. Like I say, when you're doing a painting like this, but you're not, a lot of people, they just have a photograph. And they're basically a human version of a printer, of a latex printer or an inkjet printer. And they kind of got a human version of Photoshop, and because they're basically manufacturing something, They see a photograph, and oftentimes it's a really nice rendering, but it's just not something that these images here didn't exist anywhere. This face is out of my mind. All of these faces is out of my mind, Now I did reference other things. But when you paint this way, you kind of have to let the paint evolve. You like to let the painting evolve. You don't really go in and say, okay, well, this value is here, and I'm going to sketch this little line in right there. And I'm going to do this, that, and the third. It's just something that has to happen kind of organically. It has to come out of the artist's mind's eye and kind of emerge as what it is. And that's exactly how this painting is happening. And like I say, and what I do is, I need some information, so I get things like these feathers. And the feathers do help me. The feathers help me to be able to render a somewhat competent image of what I need. Okay, so now that I have that sketched in with this bristle brush, I'm going to go in and paint in with this synthetic, I don't know if it's synthetic bristle, but it's a little bit between a bristle and a softer brush. And I'm going to go in with some Titanic white, and I'm going to hit with a little bit of cadmium yellow light, cadmium yellow medium, and I'm going to have a little bit of cobalt blue to kind of knock it down some so it's not so bright. And I'm going to just start kind of getting the stock in. For this Also, I do have now, I'm not painting wet on dry anymore. And I do like to paint in layers. Now, have I officially started to paint in layers on this painting yet? Not really. I mean, the painting is blocked in, the painting is modeled. But I'm still inventing. As you can see, I'm inventing these feathers. So whenever I'm painting and I'm kind of doing something from out of my memory, there is a bit of modeling. I stay in the modeling stage for quite some time because I'm still inventing images. And it's ideas that's going on. You know, and those ideas, you know, you have to put them, you have to paint it. You have to put it on the canvas. See how it looks, kind of try it out. It's kind of like giving it a trial. When you go buy a car, you go take it out for a test drive. You kind of test drive your ideas a little bit. And just kind of see how that works. Just kind of see how your ideas is coming together. And like I say, this painting is part of a series of paintings I'm doing. This is called the Tsenacommacah series, and this is out of paintings. Oh, somebody's waving. I love it when you guys wave. Let me see what's going on. Ah, Ashe, Phasia, how you doing? Hey, let everybody know that I'm in this second round account because they blocked me for 60 days for a post that I did where basically I was posting, you know, I mean, Facebook ain't right, man. That's all I gotta say is I'm gonna go live multiple times in a day. I'm gonna go live in Facebook, and I'm also gonna go live because I just don't like Facebook. I'm gonna also go live on my YouTube page, so you guys be sure to go to my YouTube. You know, so I can kind of keep my groups together. You know. But anyway, I'm back to. I took a little bit of a break from painting every day and going live every day, but that's gonna stop. I'm gonna start going live every day. Well, you know, like 5 times a week, 4 times a week, something like that. I'm gonna start doing that again. And I stopped because, well, it was other projects that I was doing, other things. A lot of things go on in one's life, and you just have to be kind of able to adjust. And I always have multiple projects going on. I almost never just have one thing. Okay, I'm just sitting here painting. It looks like it, but when the camera's off, there's a lot of other things going down. There's a lot of other things going down. So, okay, this is good. So I'm liking the way these feathers are coming along. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap brushes. Now I've kind of built myself a little brush tray here. However, I want some pointy brushes. And but I don't want too many pointy brushes too soon. I want some brushes. I think I'm gonna recruit this brush. It's kind of pointy, but it's a little bit bigger. It's like a number 6 round. And this brush is a Soho brush, and it's not the most expensive brush. And it's not always the most expensive brush. It's the brush that's give me the right kind of spring back. You know, because sometimes when I paint, I don't want the brush to spring. I just want to glide across the top of the paint and do a subtle blend. Like now, I'm kind of making some of the textures as I go. I want a texture. I do paint with textures with my painting, so I do want my brush to kind of give me some spring back, because that's how you get textures. You paint with a thicker paint, and you do want the brush to kind of push through that paint. You don't want the brush to bend with the paint. You want the brush to kind of push through. So sometimes if the brush push too much, you kind of get these lines, or these little scratchy lines that look like the brush. Then sometimes you want that model smooth line that looks like a little soft and curved, but it's still brush texture. So that's the hardness of the brush that does that, or the softness of the brush. Then sometimes you just want smoke, or you just want that blend to gradate, ever so slightly from one color to the next. Then you want a brush that almost has no spring back at all. It's just that brush is going to just float over the top of the wet paint and slightly blend one color into the next color. So, and sometimes it seems like sable brushes are some of the softest brushes, easiest brushes to blend and get smooth, beautiful blends and colors with. However, they also don't allow you to push and drag that paint around. But they tend to be expensive brushes. So sometimes the brushes that's thick and coarse, like hog's hair brushes, they're generally the same. It's a hog's hair. I mean, they have like the Chinese hog hair, I forget what it's called. Then they have the European hog, he's different. But every species of hog has a slightly different kind of hog hair with a different kind of, it holds paint different. Of course, this is the old way that they had different hardness and softness of brushes. See, so right now I'm painting this, and I really, as I'm getting to the end, I want some more hardness. But when I was up there, it was a little bit more blending. I didn't really want all that hardness. So it's like, which one do you want, you know? Which one do you want at the moment? So it's kind of like you switch brushes not on how thick or thin they are, or what type of brush it is. Like certain types of brushes makes nice textures, like this one. So this is what I call my feather and grass brush. And I have 3 of those for whenever I paint nose, and then I have some blend brushes. So, you know, you want to have enough brushes though. You don't want to not have enough brushes. And then sometimes you just want to load a lot of paint up in your brush and get that thing. Now, what do I want to do? Do I want to start getting in there with some black? I think now I'm going to start going in, start getting the tips, because I do have the tips of these feathers. The tips of these feathers are actually a darker tone, you know. It's not really black. It's really like, I can see the colors in them in terms of what I mix on my palette. And I'm going to use some alizarin crimson and Sedaxidine purple, mixed with a little bit cobalt blue. And of course, it's going to be harder to get that texture in these darker colors because they're just not going to be seen. And I rather at first, well, really, I just rather paint these little lines with a thin brush as opposed to trying to use a texture brush, because it's going to look like a texture. And what I really want these feathers to start looking like, I definitely want them to look like feather. You know, the little texture of the little lines that come out of the feather. Okay. So, and I don't care how many brushes I have to clean at the end of the day. I just care about, can I paint exactly what I want to paint? You know, and so if a brush is hindering me from that, okay, well, that brush is going to go away. That brush is not going to be used. I'm going to put it away. I'm not going to paint with it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach for the brush that's going to give me exactly what I want. And a lot of times these little short, bright brushes do a really good job because you use them sideways. And you can do a real job of making some even thin lines with that. You wouldn't think so. But now I'm using the slightly lighter color. And I'm doing a little bit of raw umber, a little bit of cobalt, a little bit of titanium, white, with some alizarin crimson, to kind of make this, and I'm making a little thin line to make the textures, the different colors that come into making the little stripy textures of the end of this. And this is kind of like my beginning. This is kind of important for me because this is when I'm beginning a certain effect. And it's very important for me to, because it's like a recipe, you know. I'm going to repeat this throughout this eagle feather kind of quill or jacket or whatever you want to call it, a cape that Powhatan Tsenacommacah is wearing. And I chose to have him in this cape because, you know, he was mourning his daughter. I mean, he didn't know what these invaders were doing to his daughter. And all he knew is that he had to go, it was his job to save face in front of his people. He couldn't sit back and look like a wimp and say, hey, look, they kidnapped my daughter, and I'm scared of their fire sticks. So I've seen some of my toughest warriors get cut down by these things. I'm the king, and I need to be here for my people, and I don't need to be the one who's going to get cut down. And I need to be here to make some decisions in the future. So, I mean, you can kind of see how difficult this was for any native king. On the one hand, the English were presenting them with products and goods that they have never, ever seen before. I mean, these things were like, you know, it's just like if aliens came from another planet and they had new technology that almost seemed like magic, you know, everybody would want it. I mean, you know, for example, they could have a cloaking device, you know, like Star Trek, you know, where you can make yourself invisible, and they were selling this to you. And of course, if we had this, we could go to our enemies, we go to the Russians or the Chinese or whoever, and the military would really, really be would be interested in that because, holy, you mean tell me that we can cloak ourselves and we can go see what kind of nuclear facilities they have or biological weapons? Like since COVID is a thing now, you know, I can imagine people being very interested in that. And these are the same thing. They had swords, they had breastplates, they had tomahawks, they had axe heads. The English had quite a bit of stuff that was obviously very intriguing to a warrior king, or a king who was also a general, a king who was also the head soldier. And so, especially when the king also knew that it was very hard for him to defend himself against this new invader. And the king knew that anytime the invader wanted to, the invader could come after him. You know, this invader could just, it was almost nothing he could do but run. And that happened oftentimes with Powhatan Tsenacommacah, or Chief Powhatan. When they built the new fort closer and closer, you know, they came up the James River, and they came up the York River, until they got to the point where the river split. Of course, they was right at Powhatan Tsenacommacah's royal place, which is Gloucester County, which was called Kamoka, which, of course, that area is now renamed to Gloucester County. So all of the original names that the original natives had, the English completely destroyed it, because so they didn't want no reclaims. They didn't want any natives in the future to come back and say, hold on, this is our land. See, it's still called by our native names. So it was very important for them to take the name away, the original name. So Richmond was Powhatan, named after the Powhatan natives. And so the same thing, Kamoka was renamed Gloucester County. And you can look up Gloucester County to see exactly where that was. But they did leave the river names. They did leave the Mattaponi River because the Mattaponi was one of the most populous groups of natives. They weren't the most warlike. They were not the most, well, they were the most warlike eventually. They were, that's where it's kind of like New York City is not our capital, but New York City is one of our cities, or one of our states that contain quite a large population of Americans, as opposed to, say, for a place like Utah, that don't really hold that many Americans at all compared. You know? So that's exactly like what the Mattaponi natives were. Now, and that's why they still exist, because there were so many of them. So as everybody slowly intermarried with the English, and also they intermarried with the African, and a lot of escaped African slaves joined the Tsenacommacah. They just literally married their daughters. You know, I mean, the English were the ones that forced everybody. Because I hear a lot of people say, well, the Native Americans had slaves. Yeah, because the English say, well, hold on, this person is worth, for example, in today's currency, this person is worth $5 million. And this person who used to own him want their money back. Hold on, what are you going to do? So the Native Americans say, okay, we're fishermen here. And but my daughter really wants to marry this fellow here that escaped from this plantation. And so they would give the Englishman whatever it was he was asking for this native. And on the record, they had to carry it for tax purposes. So they had to write down, the English person had to write down, Native American buys, you know, slave John Brown. Now, was the person a slave? Well, the thing about it is, no, the person wasn't, but oftentimes these people, the Native American as well as freed blacks, still had to go into town, and they still had to buy and trade. Now, if you looked exactly like other people who were not free, people could do something that's called press you into slavery. They could press you back into slavery. You can have paperwork, because people are still crooks today. So there's, if you look at what's the lady's name? There's plenty of example where blacks were free and they got pressed back into slavery by somebody who just wanted a quick buck. And it was either you can believe this Englishman or you can believe this black person. And why should you believe the black person? Because they're worth money. It's actually better for us not to believe them, because we're going to make money off of this person. So even today, it's like, okay, the policeman's word against, you got video footage against what everybody else saw. Okay, more video footage might come out and say, okay, there's another angle. People can draw conclusions. However, back then you didn't have that. You just had somebody's word, and that word said that, you know, this person's a slave and he's an escaped slave. He forwards some paperwork. In this particular county here, he's here trying to buy some wheat for his family or whatever, some cloth to make some clothes. But we believe this person's a slave. We don't believe he's free. And so they would just put the person in jail. And they would do some kind of trumped up fake court case. And the next thing you know, this guy is a slave again. So it was very important when you went into town, if you was on a Native American reservation or you was on land that was purchased just outside of the reservation, but as long as you were on your own land or in your own county, you know, the local people kind of knew who you were. They didn't mess with you too much. But if you went, say, for example, into Richmond, where nobody really knew you, you could easily be pressed into slavery, and you wouldn't necessarily get a chance to come back and get your people to go get you. They'll just move you to some other place like Pennsylvania, you know, a little bit far away, or they'll move you down south to North Carolina somewhere. And it was just too bad, so sad, you know. So a lot of times I see this. I mean, it looks like that 200 years later that Iris Dabney, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm waving back. How you doing? This says bring them on camera. I'm gonna hit the button. If you want to come on camera, I'm gonna hit add. It says can't bring Iris on camera. So for some reason I think you wanted to come on camera, but for whatever reason it says you can't. So I imagine you might have a phone or a device that does not have a camera. So basically what I'm doing is just kind of making these feathers in Powhatan Tsenacommacah's little quill here. And I'm just kind of going back and forward and trying different brushes and trying to create those effects. And oftentimes you will see me holding on to about 5 or 6 different brushes at once, because I'm trying to get that particular line quality. And so that's essentially what I'm doing. But I want to see some of the color. I don't want this to just be black, because the color that's on the end of these feathers is not really black. At least that's not what I'm seeing. So I'm using a sable brush. It's a little bit soft. I really use this once I have wet on wet more, but I'm using it now because it's just, this is called a cat's tongue sable, and this is the number 0. And I really like these Escato brushes. I mean, these are some of my favorite brushes. They just handle absolutely magnificently, especially when you're doing little fine detail lines like I'm doing now. Even though I don't like to use them a lot when I'm painting wet over dry, because you're dragging these things over some pretty, sometimes it's a kind of rough surface, and these brushes do cost a little bit more. And you could be literally sanding down the little hairs on your brush, you know? And you start out with like a 1/4 inch of hair, of bristle or whatever on your brush. Then you wind up by the time you're done with this little stick, a little nub, hardly no hair at all. Then you got to go buy another one brush, $20, $30, $40. So you got to watch out. And the bigger the sables are, the more they cost. They could easily cost $200, $300 for one brush, by the way. And it depends on really where you're painting at, you know, what your level of skill is and what your awareness is, you know. You know, some people just don't, they use cheap brushes, they always have, they don't even know anything about using any kind of other brush. So they're able to get a pretty satisfactory result for themselves. And that's all they're really interested in, you know. And it's basically whatever works for you, but you know, like I say, as an artist, I'm always experimenting with different materials. I don't even care about the price when it comes down to tools to make art with. I oftentimes, if I see somebody spending big money for something, oh, I'm sure gonna try, because there's a reason. It's a reason that person is spending a lot of money for that particular item. And the reason why is he's benefiting from it. I mean, he won't keep, nobody would just spend money just for no reason. And he's able to paint something that otherwise would be very difficult to paint. So you do want to invest in great tools to work with. Sometimes you have better tools, you're just going to paint better. And even, say for example, if your painting skill on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being like, let's quantify 10. Say that's Michelangelo, Raphael's level of painting. I like to go to the Renaissance artists, the classic Renaissance artists, because really they were the best artists. I'm not an abstract artist. I have done abstract, but it's easy. I can do a painting a day abstract. And if I could get them sold, make a whole bunch of money. And that's one way to do, you know, do some figurative painting, do some abstract painting. But, you know, I don't want to be known as an abstract artist. I have images. I have something I want to say with my artwork. You know, there's something that I want to say. And I've always had something to say. I've never been the type of person that don't have something to say, don't have a message. I don't want somebody else's rehashed message, because that's somebody's rehashed message. I don't want anybody's program message from somebody's institution, because that's a message from some institution some person created. I want my own message. And right now, the message that I feel coming through my mind, out of my person, is about ancient Egypt and the Native Americans before the English arrived, before 1607. Oftentimes, these paintings kind of call to me. They literally will kind of tell me, I want you to paint me. And it's not even something that is it's not even something that I would just normally say, okay, I want to paint this. It's like the painting always knew it wanted to be painted, and I got selected to be the one who paint it. That's kind of how I that's kind of how I see it. And so now, I wish I could robo-paint these things. I wish I could just paint them in 10 minutes. I would have thousands of paints along the same genre, along the same thought pattern. Because there's a lot of paintings in me. And I think Leonardo da Vinci said, it's just before he died, he said, it's just not enough time. And then I feel kind of bad also for part of my career. I spent my career doing other, sometimes even completely unrelated to art things. I do regret those things but you have to make a living. You got to pay bills. You have to, you have obligations to people, places, and things. That's really hard for an artist. And the artist's life is kind of tough because the artist has to do those things. They have to live in this modern world. And I think the modern world is not up to par for the average artist. It's actually subpar. So I think if you're an artist, I think, people say the whole starving artist or the poor artist. And I think Vincent van Gogh hit it on the head. And I think he's one of the best artists, the best life of an artist. And Vincent van Gogh sold one painting, but he made so many. But he almost single-handedly changed the way we see art. I mean, he changed the whole art world almost by itself. But did he reap any of the benefits of his particular art and creative genius? No. Did the people around him, contemporary, his brother knew he had something special going on. His father was not there. I mean, they had died already. His mother, you don't hear any words about them. So I imagine that they were just not on the scene. So it's usually someone that can kind of help the artist, or else the artist just never gets discovered. He just lives his life, and there's art that could have been created that never, ever, ever, never gets created. And that's really a tragedy. I think that is, I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of everything, there is culture. Because no matter how many wars you fight, how great you think your country is, or what kind of principles of your religion, what establishes your culture is the art that it makes. Because that is what people are going to remember in the future. Nobody remembers what the accountant did during the time of, say for example, of an artist. I'm just going to pick one, and that's going to be Shakespeare. All you know is the mind of Shakespeare because he made plays, which is a type of art. You remember the artwork. The same thing with the Egyptians over here. How do we know so much about their culture? I'm sure contemporary to them, there was thousands of culture, but they did not make the high arts that the Egyptians made. So guess what? They've been forgotten. they've been forgotten. They no longer exist where they can be, they can't talk about themselves and what they did. See, in our culture that's alive, we can talk to other cultures about what we do. And even though we don't have high art, we can still communicate. But once your culture dies, and all cultures die, I mean, the Celtic culture in England was there before the English culture. And we only know them by some of the artwork that they made. We know little pieces of their language by some remnant that might still exist, or something that's an evolution of those people. But the same thing, the Druids of Northern Europe. You just have little bits and pieces here and there. But when you find a burial tomb where some art was stored from a king or some person, and you go, oh my God, look at this this burial site, and look at the kind of stuff this guy had. We never knew that. And you study that, and that's how you know the history of humanity. That's how you know how you are evolving as human beings on the earth. The only way you know that you're evolving, is by studying what the past has done. In order to actually fully know the past, you really have to know the mind of the human beings that was here. And notice the key emphasis I make is the mind of the human beings. Not the politics of them. Because the politics is their wars, is how much destruction they did. How much of their so-called, quote-unquote, other fellow human being enemies they killed. And that is recorded. If you look at the Greeks, it's recorded in their pottery. You know, because they were warring culture. And you get the people that's important. The people that's important is recorded in the art. There has to be an individual from that contemporary society that decided to make some art, whether the art served a purpose, like a pot serves a purpose, or whether, I guess the modern art, I was just talking to somebody about this, modern art is in terms of art, is a place where we have museums. And these museums are kind of like churches for artists. There's the only places that I know is out of European culture where they put art for art's sake there. Art galleries and art museums are shrines just for artists to communicate with their public. And it's kind of like the same thing, like if you go to a movie theater, the theater is a place where cinematographers can go and other people can go, so the cinematographer can communicate to his audience. The same thing, the concert hall is a place to go, where the musician can communicate with their particular audience. Now, you have similar kind of things, but these are people who get paid to do one thing. They get paid to entertain you. And in Europe, they use art. Hello, how you doing, Yvette Smith? Let me see if I can bring you on camera. Things that bring on camera. I want to see. I don't know if you have a camera or not. It says add. Oh, it's kind of trying to add you. It says adding. So I'm adding. If you want to come on my live, you can. Don't worry. All my friends are pretty much civilized. So even though I have some Kemet stuff, I have some like different things on there. It's all good. But join me. You know, I'm making art here. This art is going to be here for hundreds of years into the future. And these videos are going to be possibly 100 years into the future of me creating the art. You know, if you could go into the studio of, say, Jackson Pollock, or if you could have gone into the studio of Picasso, I guess Picasso is a better name, a better known artist. You know, that would have been a very interesting thing if they had more cameras in these studios. But Doing a lot of the great artists, cameras weren't even invented yet. At least motion picture cameras weren't. So now we have not only cameras, but we have something called social media, where, of course, like I say, I don't know how many people is, but I'm going to say this again. I'm going to just stop and take a moment for my painting. Please go to my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube, help grow that channel, because once I get 1,000 people on my YouTube, I can stream live from a mobile device, which is nice. You know, I can go places and paint stuff. I'm not just stuck in my studio, and that's the problem. I'm stuck in the studio. I have a patron. I have a person who wants me to do a painting. This young lady here, some of you guys might recognize her. I'm doing her painting next. I'm going to do it live on Facebook. So I'm going to do her painting next live on Facebook. Be sure to tune in for this bad boy. And it's going to be a 24. And I like this, and I love this painting because this is my first Facebook person. So I think this person is a special young lady, because anybody who's my first is going to be a special person to me. And so definitely she's already gone to the special person to me status. And of course, when it comes to my painting, that's where my heart is. My heart is where my painting is. I mean, seems like the older I get, all I want to do is paint. I want to do nothing else. You know? I just want to paint, 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 paint. So, but of course, reality says you got to do more things than just paint. Got to do some other stuff too. So, but coronavirus is kind of making certain things possible, isn't it? And so coronavirus is a good thing. Next I'm going to paint is this grass. I'm going to be covering some of this black. I have this kind of as a framing device for my painting. But also I'm going to get into that as well. But right now I'm focusing on these feathers right now. But I think I'm going to put this painting because I don't really see coronavirus letting up anytime in the future. I think I heard somebody say, Donald Trump said there should be a cure just in time for the election, so vote for me. It's going to be available. Immune shot is going to be available on November the 4th. Of course, election day is November the 3rd. So, whoa, man, you know, it's getting kind of interesting out there. So, first of all, who's going to be the first one that want to take that immune shot? That thing, they got all kinds of rumors of what this so-called immune shot can do, because Bill Gates has scared everybody to death. Because he went down talking about population control, went all over the world talking about this stuff. Then at the same time, he's talking about pandemic solutions to save people. First of all, you're talking about not allowing people to live. That's what population control is. That means, okay, your unborn children would not be born. Let's put that in perspective. So that's the same as genocide, isn't it? If you're going to prevent people from being born, isn't that the exact same thing as killing the people that's already born? I mean, it equals to the same result for the person who wants to do it. You're keeping a group of people that you don't want to become too empowered from building the population up. Especially in a place like a democracy. I mean, you think that people can't see that? I mean, I think people can see right through that. So I think he should be the last person talking about immune shots. Or he should have never, I mean, if a person's supposed to be a smart computer, just because you make money don't mean you smart. I'm going to just say it just like that. Just because you make money don't mean you shot. It's just that you're in a position. You put yourself in a position. You are good at putting yourself in a position where you get money from other people. But you go and you run your mouth in front of the world, and you go to places where people feel helpless. People feel poor. And you giving out shots and all this stuff. And then you get back in front of another group of people and you talk about population control. Well, these people think you're trying to help them. And all at the same time, you're talking about preventing them from being born. All at the same time. And we do know, like in places like Israel, part of their immigration policy is they'll sterilize women, especially coming from African countries. Yes, they don't want you reproducing in Israel if you're African or brown or some other than European, Israeli kind of individual. It's just really bizarre how some people think. And guess what? If you prescribe to that group, directly or indirectly, and are related to that group in any way, that's scary, man. That's some scary stuff. And people got to realize it's not being anti this or anti that. You're scaring the heck out of people. Right now, the guy, Donald Trump, he's scaring some Democratic people, some Democrats, people who identify as people of color who are not on the favorite side of things. You have some real terrorism going on in this country. And then you got, in addition to this terrorism that's going on, you got COVID-19, and people think this is a genocide made in a test tube kind of thing. Well, whether it is or not, and then you get a president that really don't want to do nothing to solve it, it's almost like the whole purpose of it is to kill poor people. And we do know that in this country, African Americans is at the bottom of that group. And you can see that the people that's dying from it follows the poverty line. It follows the wealth line of the distribution of wealth in this country. African Americans tend to be the poorer people. They're dying the most. Then Hispanic Americans is the next group of people that's been sort of discriminated against financially. They're dying the next most. And then Asian Americans, they're discriminated against the next, are dying the next most. And the people that's dying the least is the white Protestant males. So you can see how that's scary to a certain group of people, especially since the people who control biological weapons tend to be white Protestant males. And the people who control even the thing that we're on now, Facebook, Microsoft Windows. These people have all the controls, all of the controls. Other people have none. And you can say, well, because of their own genius, because of their own smarts, they're in charge. Yes, that's true. But you, because of your own genius, you are held at a standard that you have to realize that people have kind of bought into your companies and allowed you to prosper. You cannot go to the same people who made you rich and basically scare them to death. You know? But those people are going to start boycotting you. But you say it's too late now. I'm a 100 billionaire. I can do whatever I want because the money's in the bank. Well, you know, there was life after the Roman Caesars. There was life after every king that's been on earth. And everything that they tried to build was eventually torn down. So if you want your legacy to prosper as a shaker and mover in culture, you're going to want to be sensitive to those so-called people on the bottom. Because even though they might not have the power, they have one power, which I call the power of the womb. And even though all these devices have been invented to keep these people's populations down, the women in that culture, and the men too, because it's a two-way go, they tend to make babies better than anybody else. And I don't even know if everybody in Africa has been counted. I mean, people just ain't on the, people not on the books. So I don't even know. You can say so many people living in the continent of Africa. I don't even know if that's possible. Robin Brown, how you doing? I'm waving back. Good to see you. It says bring them on camera. I'm going to hit this button and see if I can add you. If you don't want to come, you don't have to, but it is what it is. Okay, so basically I'm painting in the feathers of Tsenacommacah now. Bring those out. I'm kind of doing some, at first I had it kind of blocked in or gestured in. Now what I'm doing is more detailed painting technique. Just a little bit more details and I'm painting in. And I don't want to mess my feathers up, so I'm going to put this feathers down. I can't been looking at it a while. I really have a pretty good idea how this is going to go. So I'm going to put some of these feathers down for a minute, so I don't mess them up, because I got brushes in my hand, I got colors, got all kinds of things going on. Well, let me grab one of my rags. I usually keep a rag in my hand too, because that's a painting tool as well. Okay, now that I painted on this side, I painted kind of like light colors, highlight colors, over top of dark colors that's dry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm kind of painting these light colors with texture. You know, I'm putting the paint on not really, really thick, but just thicker, because I do like texture. When you see this painting, when you see my paintings, you don't just see the image. You know, this a printer can never do this, because this has impasto. It has brush texture built into modeling. And it's almost kind of as a sculptural effect. That's what it gives you. It gives you kind of like more eye candy. Because that's what the painting is designed to be. The painting is designed to be pretty. The painting is designed to be something that you're going to like. Now, would the average person want this painting in their living room? No, but the next painting I'm going to do is a painting that's going to go in somebody's living room, because it's a commission piece. These pieces that you see me doing are paintings for the galleries. These are for installations. These paintings will be installed in certain places. These paintings are not meant to be, well, you can put them in your house if you have such a mansion. And this painting will work with your particular shtick or style. By all means. By all means, you know. I'd be most happy with that, actually. And what I'm trying to do is just add some definition to some of these feathers. Kind of get them a little bit more isolated out. Also emphasizing some of the paint that I already have, but just putting another layer down. It just helps to build a richer experience of color on the canvas. And like I say, it should be a color explosion. I do like color explosions in my painting. You know, some kind of feast of goodness. You know, a feast of goodness. So I'm just going to add a little separation here and there. Give a little bit more clarity to the shape of some of these feathers. I kind of want the feathers to look a little bit mysterious. I don't want them to look too defined, but at the same time, I don't want them to look too wispy either. I want them to look and it's going to be really nice when I add the grass. And I might do, I don't know when I'll do that. I'm going to start going live twice a day. I might even go live 3 times a day in different places. YouTube, different Facebook channels. Because I'm going to just be getting busy with a lot more painting. And I was just kind of getting a little stingy with it. I didn't want to bombard people with too much of my painting, but actually it kind of helps me a little bit when I go live. I'm very productive. My ideas flow really nicely. So it's not a bad thing, actually. It's not a bad thing at all. And that's important when ideas flow, because that's what it's all about. A lot of times painting is about, okay, are you having any good ideas? I mean, what are you doing? See, right now I'm just adding to the feather plumes. They're just draping down. And right now as an artist, I'm just liking the way they're draping. I'm liking the way they drape. It's just a simple pleasure. Oftentimes in life, it's the simple pleasures. You know, and that goes for an artist too. When you're painting, it's not the overly complicated, oh, I'm painting the eyes, I'm painting the face, I'm painting the figure. Sometimes it's just feathers, the way they're hanging. Sometimes that's giving you a whole lot of satisfaction. And sometimes it's the juxtaposition of color. You just like the way the paint it's doing, the way you're putting it down. It's flowing. It's a flow. And you're feeling pretty daggone good about it. Okay, so I'm creating some contrast back there in those feathers. Right now, I'm not really trying to be too much on all of the details. Not yet. But I think what I'm going to start doing, at this point, and I didn't think I'll get to it. But I want to start adding some more smokiness because, I know what I need to do before I even do that. I wanted to work on the arm of Opec Tsenacommacah. His arm is a little, well, there's still a lot I need to do to this. There's a lot that I need to do to this painting, actually. It's a ton of stuff, and you can't possibly do everything at once. I mean, you get your ideas, I need to do this, I need to do that. But you can't do everything at one time. You just got to go. Okay, I'm going to do this today, I'm going to do this tomorrow, this the day after tomorrow. And then eventually I'll have the whole thing put together. But for right now, it's just merrily over. You know, you just get on down the stream with it and say, okay, I got that done. Okay, what next? What am I going to do next? Okay, now that's done. You know, so that's the way it is sometimes when you're a painter. You know, and you're painting your thing. But like I say, my plan is by the time I get to the end of the year, I'm going to have, and my year starts in March. It doesn't start in January. So I'm going to have one big one, 2 big ones, 3 big ones, and I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have 3 more by the time I get to March 1. And then I'll probably have some other smaller ones. And then I have 4 like this already made. I just need to refine them. Then 2 other kind of slightly smaller ones. I probably have 3 other smaller ones. So those are my overarching goals for 2020. Yeah. In terms of my productive achievements, I guess. I guess you're going to call it that. I don't know what you're going to call it, really. Okay, now I got to figure out which brush I want to do. I'm going to get these. I got these Hamburg Premiers from Creative Mark. There's some kind of mongoose synthetic. I don't know, mixed with natural. I don't know what it is. But it's slightly stiff. And what I'm going to do is, actually, I want to do something else before I did that. I need a good stiff brush, but I don't know if I need too big of a brush. I don't like to make too many different brushes because my cleanup takes forever. I'm trying to find an example printout where I can see more details, but I just can't find the one that I'm looking for. So I have to kind of, got a lot of printouts, so I have to kind of, and I do sketches. Different kind of ways, multiple ways, and you know. But again, even when I work with digital, the stuff comes out of my head. Yes, there's references I use, but ultimately I consider my art when I paint off of my paintbrush. Okay, so I cannot find. Can't find what I supposedly am looking for. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to hold on to this bad boy. Okay, so I'm gonna mix a little Dioxidon purple, some ultramarine blue. And I'm going to go in and establish some dark right underneath here because I've been wanting to paint this for a while. Because that color, and a little bit of Mars Black, because I don't really like the way the anatomy actually on this hand, this arm looks. You can see, if you remember from when I painted before, I have worked on this some. Now, sometimes when I back off from it and look at it, I have one impression, and then all of a sudden, you know, I get close, and I get a different impression. And then I forget when I'm close, what it was I was wanting to do when I was backed off. So you have to kind of, you want to keep yourself kind of. Sometimes I just have to sit on my little couch over here. I have to sit on my couch and kind of contemplate. But sometimes I just get forgetful as to, you know, what the world was I trying to do earlier? You know, that kind of thing happens. Because it's generally when you're making a paint, it's probably about 100, 200-300 things you want to really do. And you have to address them before you finish the painting. You want to address it. But you can't address everything at once. You know, it's a gradual process. You do this, then you, okay, I got that done. Now let me do this. Oh yeah, I forgot to do this. Then you do something else. Now what I'm going to do is just do a little blendation here to get this kind of doing salter, something that I wanted. Kind of a little bit. All right, that's it right there. Okay, so I'm going to put this brush up. Oh, now I have certain brushes. Now this is a Rosemary brush. I really like these brushes. I like my Raphael brushes too, though. My favorites is my Raphael, but this is my second favorite. This could very easy. I've just recently kind of come into this company. This may start being my first favorite brushes, but I love this brush. for some soft blending. That's if I have enough paint to blend with. But when I don't have enough paint to blend with, nothing is better than my Raphaels. Well, not nothing, but I just love these Raphaels. I love them, I love them. I mean, if I was a hobbyist that likes sports cars, that's kind of how brushes are to me. You know, like a person who's a sports car hobbyist. You know, well, anybody that has something like that, you know, anybody that has a little pet peeve, you know, because, but the brushes serve a function, you know, I paint with them. Okay, I think I need to get me some, do like clean colors. I like to know that my colors are clean. So when I go dip, because sometimes I do paint on the canvas like I am down. And you know, I do a lot of blending right here. Okay, now once I get enough color in there that I can mess with, and I can just, and then a lot of times I don't want the color so thick. I want the color thin. I want the color so that I can just have a little, it's called glazing. So even though I'm modeling, I'm also glazing at the same time. And what I'm doing is I already have my modeling layer down. And I just put a thin blended layer of another tone and blending that into, to be seamless with, the paint that's already dry that's there. And I might go into this with, for example, I'm going to get a little cadmium yellow. I'm going to mix that with a little titanium. And I will go into here. I'll go into this kind of light, kind of orangey looking color, or skin flesh color that I already have there. And then I'll just start, and this is a sable brush I'm using this with. This is my Raphael brush. Now I'm going to grab more titanium and less paint and more oil, just a little bit. And it has, this oil is still 50-50. It's 50% linseed and Gamsol. Actually, it's 30% linseed, 20% Gamsol, and 50% Gamsol and 50% Galkit. Because I like the gambling product. It's basically an alkyd. It's an alkyd mixed with traditional linseed oil, mixed with Gamsol. It's type of odorless turpentine, but it's very nice on the biology. It is very health friendly. So I can still paint with oil, don't have to worry about slowly poisoning myself. Okay. Okay, so I created just a little bit more model in that. And the whole idea is I just definitely want, I'm going to use a little bit more Doxodon purple right here. I wanted just some more detail, some more dark on this side of the arm. And then lighter as the arm is kind of getting swung around. But he's kind of holding his blow. So I do want that tension in that arm. And I do want to play with the light as that tension is there. Okay, so I'm able to address that to some level. Now I have to sit there and see how that goes. See how look at that one day. Tomorrow I might change my mind. Paint it back another way. And oftentimes I will have 3, 4, 5 paintings open or gone on at once, as you can see now. Every single one of these paintings in my studio is still an active painting. I could work on the one over there tomorrow. Then the day after that, I might work on the one over there. It really depends on how I feel about something. And what I'm going to use is this really nice long hair sable. I really like this brush for my little subtle blending. I don't like to use it too much, just on a general area. I use my short hair sables for other more delicate blendies. And I just pick my little colors here and there, and just again put a little small glaze. And it's not a whole lot of oil in this glaze. This glaze still has very, very conservative oil levels in them. Of course, the modeling fun hasn't even started yet with this painting. Right now, this is still, this is still just getting a base, getting this thing organized. I'm still organizing my image, my design. I'm still trying that. Again, just throwing a little bit more glaze in. And there's still enough oil in here. I got the oil that's in the pigment. Then I got the oil that's in my medium. And I'm just really just trying to build up the tones at this level. I'm not trying to put any kind of, I'm not trying to build up any particular sheen yet. I'm not trying to build any kind of sheen. But I am building up the patina. I'm building up the finish. I'm building up the finish. And here I went too far. So I have to use my other brush, which is a rag. And it's kind of like an eraser. Kind of an eraser. You get a little bit of an eraser kind of thing going down. Also, you can get some nice blends with a rag too. Nice little thin little glazy blend. Okay. Okay, so I like that. That's good enough for now. So I think next what I want to do, what I want to address, what I told myself I wanted to address today, is I want to make some of the images start to pop forward. I have some areas that still, I was looking at it, it's still a little bit too dark. And I can move this out the way because I think I have enough of this reference. So I want to move this out of the way of the painting. And I think I do need to sit back and look at my painting some. So I'm going to put my palette down Put my brushes down. Put my little reference arrow down. Grab a little water, because sometimes I get warm when I paint. I mean, my brain's going. It doesn't seem like you're doing brain work, but you are. You know, there's a lot of intellectual stuff that happens when you paint. But I want to have some contrast. I want to break up some of these. I want to break up some of these, some shapes that don't quite make sense. And I think right here, this is definitely, I don't know why I have a hard line here, so I'm going to go in with some white. I don't really have a lot of medium in this fight. Now I am mixing a little bit of medium in. And I'm going to get rid of this hard line here. And I want to make a smoky kind of effect in here. Now where that hard line is, I am going to add some more titanium white to my palette. I'm going to mix in some other tones that is nearby to my palette. A little bit of Dioxazine purple, a little bit of ultramarine, and a little bit of burnt sienna. And then what I'm going to do is just do some stipple. And I really don't want to do the stippling. I'm going to bring it up into the feather. I'm going to take it over here too, because it's smoke. It's what I'm creating is like a smoky effect. Because there's gunpowder going off. The natives are here, but the Englishmen are firing. I mean, it's a war scene. Okay. And I'm going to need my softy brush, round number 8. And this brush is great for soft blends and creating my smoke effect. So what I'm doing is just going in and tapping down any textures I might already have that don't agree with my smoke effect. And just kind of just going in and creating that randomized smoke movement. You know, where's the air taking the smoke, you know? That's basically what I'm thinking right now. Where's the air taking this smoke right here? Because somebody shot off something over here. Maybe the natives taking care of them already. But there's some shooting that was going on before these natives chopped them down with their tomahawks. Okay, so I'm going to just get some straight titanium now. Simply because I want this line kind of obscured. Don't want to see a line there. It's going to blend in with some of the tone I already have in there. And that's going to take 24 hours to dry. So I'm not really worried about it, because it'll be still open tomorrow. If I want to paint in there, I can paint into that. Okay, so now I got rid of a hard edge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit back a little bit and see if I can remind. Oh yeah, I like the way that white pops that section of the paint. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of referencing here and kind of see where I'm at here. And it's important to kind of sit back from your painting and kind of know where you're going to go, see where you're going, back it up, reverse it, whatever you got to do. Get that thing doing what you think you want it to do. You know what? I think I want to pull that white that I like this smoke effect. And I'm sitting back and looking, but I think I want to pull that white sort of, into, I like how that's causing that section of the painting, especially in contrast against the guy that's kind of already shot down, the black of that area. I kind of like that. And I think I'm going to put a highlight on the back of his boots of Powhatan Tsenacommacah, kind of make that pop out. And I'm going to work on the boots some more of him at a later date, but for right now, I just want to get the overall values of the composition where I want. Right now, the values are kind of, they're sort of where I want. I need to get the overall harmony of the thing laid in. So, and that's what lights and darks. So right now, I think I'm gonna tackle some of that. So I like what I did here to create this little poppy. And then even here, I think I like this. So I'm gonna take some of this, even over here some. Now this right here is mixed with a little bit of like yellow and alizarin crimson and cadmium orange. It's not just white. But against the green of the grass that's already down, it looks like something else. It might look more cooler than what it actually is. But that's just the juxtaposition of tones, creating a particular kind of colorful flavor, if you would. And I'm working sort of, I'm kind of dry brushing this in, so this is sort of like a translucent tone that I'm putting in of this white. It's not really opaque. It's not really not opaque either and transparent. It's not really translucent because it has a smoky quality to it. But I'm trying to see and get a feel for where I'm going to bring this color. Where this light color, how far is it going to go over this way too? So I'm kind of like figuring it out. I think I want some more of it to kind of go down. And I kind of don't want it to go straight down. I kind of want it to kind of go up, like a little undulation, you know? Some variations of white on top of, see, and I'm building up foreground white, background, because that's what's making the smoke effect. Some of the areas got more dense smoke. Some of the areas less dense smoke. Of course, let me get you off of the edge of the frame visually. And in some of these areas, I still had the texture of the canvas in that, so it's looking kind of artsy-fartsy. Sometimes I don't like that. Oftentimes what I would do is I would actually build up the actual foundation level, smooth it out with sandpaper so you don't even get too much canvas. Because before people was painting with canvas, they're painting on very smooth panels. And they were painting on limestone and marble, you know? And they create stucco to mimic that because they didn't always have marble to paint on. It's like the ancient Egyptians. They literally painted on the walls of stone. And of course, people start modifying that. Start making stucco, then start painting on wood panels with like stucco primer, a primer that's kind of stucco-like. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And just what I got loaded in the brush right now, I see places where I can hit certain little subtle little tones. Because sometimes this is when you get into the area of the painting where the details start making the painting work. These little subtle details help the painting to work better. Helps the painting do what it needs to do better. And then sometimes with the absence of these details, just these little slight things, the painting just don't have that same charisma. Okay, so that's pretty good. And sometimes I get quiet, that means I'm doing some intense painting, chill. You know, because I'm quiet. That's definitely what that means. Because there's oftentimes, if you could go inside of my head while I'm painting, there's a big old dialogue going on. Which is kind of interesting because I'm talking to the audience. Basically, I'm talking to myself. Nobody's engaging. I don't see any comments happening. Come on, everybody, hit me with some comments. At least say, hey, man, nice painting. You know, or, hey, what you doing today? You know, be a pal, man. Sometimes I want the energy to be there because I want to get something done. I want to get the production. I want to get some, you know, accomplished, but I just don't feel the energy, you know. But I'm feeling pretty good energy right now. I feel a good little section coming on me. It's coming up. I mean, I'm at the top. I'm at the beginning of it now. It hasn't started to quite emerge, but I feel it coming. You know, I feel my mojo rising.